0 from 2 and already 7 points off the top. Don't worry though, we have a game in hand. Reading are steadfastly refusing to indulge in false dawns in 2018-19 with their latest result a 1-0 defeat to Nottingham Forest on the weekend. Welcome to episode 164 of the Tilehurst podcast with your host Marc, Mayo, joining you as always for the foreseeable future of the playlist. And joining me for tonight's show, Simeon Pickup, aka BucksRoyal, the editor of the Tilehurst.com. How's it going, mate?
I'm very well. Just about recovered from yet another defeat on the road, but looking forward to Tuesday night's game and hopefully a first league win of the season on Saturday.
Yeah, 2 home games coming up now for Reading, Birmingham and Bolton in the Cup and back to Championship on Saturday. We probably won't talk too much about Bolton. We'll leave that for the Thursday preview show with Ollie. We'll get stuck into Birmingham a little bit later on. We'll also do a pub chat on the Liam Moore situation that has developed quite significantly over the past few days, and we'll have your questions in the mailbag as well. So, without further ado, let's crack on then with the Nottingham Forest recap.
The Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
This is getting a bit of a theme now, Sim. We're 2 games into the season and we've started effectively 4-4-2 both times. Perhaps a bit of a 4-4-1-1 against Derby with John Swift starting against Derby, and 4-4-2 really with Sam Baldock and John Daddy Bodvarsson getting the starts. No Sonia Luko. What was your sort of feeling on the team as it got announced with, of course, Yaku Mate getting a start?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You go back to last season and we were often playing some kind of 4-3-3 or maybe going into 3 at the back, trying all these different formations. We even had 4-4-2 on the odd occasion under Yapstam, not very often, but noticing the trends that are coming out with Paul Clement's team selections this season, they seem to be a lot more simple, a lot more straightforward. I think it's just about getting Reading hard to beat at the back and then being able to break on the opposition and giving them trouble that way. It's not too complicated. It's not set up for the kind of possession football we had last season. We've certainly not got enough men in the middle of the pitch to be able to play that kind of keep ball. But having more players kind of dedicated out wide and more players up top gives us, in theory, a better threat going forwards. It hasn't quite worked out over the last 2 games in terms of creating chances and scoring goals, but I'm sure over the next couple of weeks we'll start to see some players really nail down their spot in the starting 11 and hopefully start to put together some cohesion and a bit of understanding between them.
Yeah, it really feels like a back to basics approach, which I'm fine with. It reminds me going back to the whole Stam entertainment debate that we were having when Jaap Stam seemed to be clinging on to his job and ultimately lost his job. It feels a bit weird now that we're back into sort of 4-4-2, not necessarily get it out wide and overlap the full box and get it into the box, but definitely a 2 banks of 4 with 2 men up front. And the thing now we have to look at, obviously the defence is a sort of continual work in progress as we go through the season, but now the thing we really are starting from scratch with is that kind of creativity you mentioned. And against Forest, did you see the sort of signs that Bodvarsson and Baldock sort of complemented each other? Obviously Marc McNulty came on the hour mark, so was there much to go on there?
To be honest, I don't really see a huge amount to be impressed with. I know it's the first game that they've started together, so you can't really be too harsh on them, but they both did kind of struggle to get into the game quite a bit. I guess Bodvarsson was earmarked as the target man, with Baldock trying to get in behind, but I didn't really see Baldock have any clear and obvious sight of goal. It was more or less left to Bodvarsson to have a few half chances in the first and second halves, which he wasn't really able to get on top of properly, and Mayo had our best chance in the first half, going through 1-on-1 on the goalie and not being able to get it past him. It's going to take a lot of work to get that partnership going. To be honest, I wouldn't have gone with it in the first place. I thought Swift did a good job playing kind of just off Bodvarsson in the Derby game. And it's interesting to see what Clement is going to go with going forwards, whether he's going to try playing an attacking midfielder off a striker. Is that one striker going to be someone more of a runner like Baldock or McNulty, or more of a target man presence like Bodvarsson or perhaps even Mate if you want a stronger player?
Yeah, I think one of the key stats that came out from Saturday's game was Reading were dispossessed 27 times, 10 of which came across the defence, which was a sort of harks back to the sort of stand problems we had of when knocking it around, getting caught in that. And there was one particular, I think it was Tyler Blackett sort of nicked the ball and then lost it instantly, which allowed the right winger to run through on goal sort of later on in the game. And the sort of stats that are coming out now at the moment, obviously it's very early to get some sort of indications. We're having the joint least shots on goal per game, obviously sort of 2 games in. We're having 8 shots per game at the goal, not necessarily on target, but there are only 3 teams have also only getting 8 shots per game on goal, and that's the lowest in the league that we're currently on. However, we're making the most interceptions in the league in a sort of per game basis, so you can get, I think, from those 2 things, the fact that the interceptions are up, shots are down, really does outline that this is sort of the defence first approach from Clement at the moment, and we'll have to see where that goes from here. Overall, then, would you say the Forest game was a better performance than against Derby?
I don't think so, to be honest. I guess in both games it didn't really look like we were going to concede, to be honest. You could have imagined quite realistically that we could have come away from both those games with clean sheets, but in the Derby game you actually saw us getting into good positions and really making some good goal scoring opportunities, particularly in the first half. Against Forest I didn't really see that much at all. So there's a lot of improvement to be had going forwards in that sense. But I think comparing these kind of performances to what we would have seen last season, the basic standard is a lot better than we saw, particularly in the last couple of months of the Yapstam era. Just doing the basics in terms of being organised, being motivated, putting in interceptions, as you say, just being competitive properly in each and every game. We're doing that. I know we haven't got any points so far, but putting up some pretty decent performances against some tough teams and really giving a good account of ourselves is something to be positive about, I think.
Well, I always say, you say about 2 defeats, I always say that you cannot look at the table until 10 games have been played, and we've got 8 more games until the table has any sort of relevance. And we're 23rd for those who do care at this stage of the season, with QPR slightly below us due to goal difference. Paul Clement said after the Forest game that I'm not worried because we have created chances in both games, and for a majority of the games we've looked pretty solid defensively, but we can't be a team that feels sorry for ourselves. We can't be the nearly team where we nearly get a result or nearly get a performance. We have to turn good performances into points. And I think the thing is with the Forest game for me is that it's one of those games that quite often gets away from you when it's a sort of against a team like Forest, who are a bit of an unknown quantity this season. They've got a lot of new players. Granka is a very organised coach, kind of very similar to Clement in a lot of ways, I suppose. And maybe, I don't know, how do you think a Yapstam team last year would have had this game? Would they have gone on to lose it 2 or 3-0, or do you think they'd have got a point out? Because I think the fact that it is 1-0 suggests a lot more steadiness, and Stam's team certainly didn't have any kind of steadiness to really go on to.
The thing about a lot of Yapstam games is that we often started not necessarily well, but not too badly in games. We'd have a decent opening, a decent 10-20 minutes at the start of a game, but then just make a really basic error, leak a goal, confidence goes, heads drop, and then we go on to lose 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, whatever it is. But the difference between that and what you see under Clement is that we're a lot more resolute, we're a lot more firm at the back, we're a lot more determined, and we were able to hold out players like Lewis Graben, who Laurie put in a really good performance against, really shut him down effectively. And that kind of performance, whether individually in terms of Laurie or collectively, when you're looking at the whole defence, wouldn't have happened under Yapstam. We would have gone in at half-time 1-0 down. We wouldn't have been able to get back into the game and would have lost it even more by even more goals than we did.
Out of interest, in the sort of preceding moments after the goal went in, did the team performance and the heads drop? Because obviously that's been a big problem, and in the last sort of, obviously the Derby game was the biggest example of, I think they did, after the equaliser, the heads did drop. Did you notice that against Forest? Was there a tangible sort of change in performance after the immediate minutes after the goal?
It did seem to go down just a little bit, but it's hard to judge that when you're at a ground like the City Ground, where the crowd gets really, really raucous, really positive when a goal goes in, and it had been a pretty even, pretty nervy game up until then, very tight. And I guess when that goal went in, just such a good atmosphere coming out from the stands, it would have put a lot of pressure onto the players. And when their heads drop like that, you don't know if it's more because they're disappointed what's happened on the pitch, or kind of like the influence of the fans having an influence on the players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that the sort of final point I'd say on Forest before we move on to Pubchat is that obviously the Derby defeat was an interesting one because we didn't really know about Frank Lampard and where they're going to be. Second game in, maybe we do have a bit more of an idea where they're going to be after they got smashed by Leeds, but it's not yet. We don't really know yet where a 1-0 defeat to Forest lies in the grand scheme of things for the season. We don't know whether teams are going to routinely get smashed at Forest or if they're going to stroll past them, and it's very difficult to tell. Obviously 2 defeats out of 2 looks very bad, but it's very difficult to tell exactly where the teams that we're facing are going to be, and that's why I think the fact, obviously the Birmingham game is going to be a lot of rotations for both teams, we expect, with the Bolton game on the weekend. Bolton, they've started relatively well, but we can be relatively assured that they're not going to be up there challenging for promotion. So that's going to be another key moment for working out exactly where this Reading team is going to be this season and exactly who is going to be in this Reading team. Did get a bit of an update over the past few days as Liam Moore committed to the club, which certainly I didn't see coming. Certainly a lot of fans have reacted very differently to. So we'll be getting into that in Pubchat now and talking the Liam Moore situation.
The Tilehurst End Podcast. Read the blog on thetilehurstend.com.
Sim, this one comes from Jamie Westcard then. It's a question for the mailbag. We're going to bring it out into the Pubchat. Any idea why Liam Moore wasn't in the squad for Saturday's game against Forest? Is Clement punishing him, or would it be more for tactical reasons? Now, I can't imagine that Clement's going to be punishing Liam Moore for handing in a transfer request on the basis that Clement, even before all this got sorted out, and Liam Moore sort of on Twitter on transfer deadline day, for anyone who hasn't seen it, talked about how he'd politely asked to move on, and the owner said that there wasn't an asking price. They just said he was not going because they want to build a team for promotion, so he's staying, and he's now says he wants to sort of fight and get his way back into the team. I can't imagine Clement was punishing him by not picking him on Saturday.
No, I don't see that, to be honest. I don't think that relationship had properly broken down to the degree where Liam will get punished by the manager. I think it's more a case of preparation for the game. When you've had Paul McShane and Thiago Ilori put in pretty decent performances against Derby, looked pretty solid at the back, you don't really want to upset that partnership, even with Liam Moore potentially coming back in, and you don't know how much training he's had, how much fitness he's got going into the Forest game. So there's not really any need to potentially kind of put that at risk, really, by changing things up.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to drop one of McShane or Ilori when they haven't really put a foot wrong so far, and that's why I do kind of think that the Birmingham game is a really nice one to sort of ease Liam Moore back in. Whether you do that alongside John O'Shea or alongside a youngster or even one of the 2 starters, do you expect to see him start against Birmingham? Because I do expect him to start.
I think it depends on what they think about the crowd, to be honest. I know it's going to be a much lower crowd than usual because it's the League Cup. It's not going to be the 15,000 plus that you might see in a league game. But depending on how the crowd reacts, it might boost his confidence or kind of hurt his confidence. It seemed pretty positive on Saturday, to be honest. Up at Forest, I think there was one round of a pro Liam Moore chant in the first half from the Reading fans, which is, I guess, nice to see. But yeah, I guess it's a good opportunity to bring him back in. There's not a huge amount of pressure. No points up for stake. I doubt anyone's too bothered about the League Cup this year, to be honest. But yeah, it's a good opportunity.
It seems a bit of a weird one in terms of the fans, because you looked on the Twitter replies to that statement that he put out on transfer deadline day, and a lot of it was very positive. A few sort of dissenting voices you can expect, but the problem is with dissenting voices when it comes to a stadium is that one boo sounds exactly the same or even louder than 100 people quietly nodding. And there is, Reading fans, I don't know exactly how divided they are in comparison to other teams' fans, but Reading fans do have a habit of dividing themselves quite neatly along some very hard-drawn battle lines. Do you foresee this becoming a problem? Let's say that Liam Moore does get a run in the team and certainly some league games in the next few weeks and months, and at that point those sort of divisions might start affecting things on the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's not just about divisions, to be honest. I think I find some of our fans quite fickle, to be honest, at times. The day after he put in that transfer request, there was some quite foul-mouthed chants against him at the Crystal Palace game, and to then have some very positive ones about him at the Nottingham Forest game, and putting that in with the very positive response on Twitter, as you mentioned, to him saying that he was going to stay. You do just wonder, if something bad happens, are they going to turn again if he scores an own goal or puts in a bad performance? Is all this goodwill that he's suddenly earned from seemingly backing down those transfer requests, is that gonna turn around or what, really? If he can put in a couple of really strong committed performances back to back, hopefully, then he'll be able to win back our favour, I would have thought. But that first game is going to be tough. He's really got to just be just not slip up, basically.
Well, it's going to be interesting as well, considering he hasn't really had a pre-season. He wasn't really featured in a lot of the pre-season teams, certainly towards the latter end of the friendlies and whatnot. And I suppose that's why the Birmingham game might be an important one for him in terms of his playing style and his performances, as much as his contract situation. Final point on this one. The way that football runs, and you use the word fickle to describe the fans then, but the football itself is very fickle in terms of commitments and contracts and whatnot, and still I do have that nagging doubt that he'll leave in January, or the end of the season is a complete misnomer. We don't know anything about that yet, but January still seems very possible that he'll move on. And do you think that that's kind of ruled out with this statement, or do you think that there's always that sort of 5 or even 10-25% chance that he'll move on in January regardless?
No, I think it's quite likely, to be honest, especially if he puts in some really good performances and really catches the eye of a Premier League team. It's the kind of time where if a Premier League team is kind of struggling in the bottom third of the table, they're going to look elsewhere for reinforcements, and if they can get Liam Moore for 10-15 million, then they might panic into buying him. I know Brighton weren't forced into doing that, but at the start of the season, when you think you've got enough defenders, you're not kind of pressured into spending a lot of money on what would have been a kind of third or fourth choice option for them. He's made it very clear that he wants to play in the Premier League. That's understandable, and considering he's potentially not got a huge amount left of his career to really push himself and get to the highest level that he possibly can, and probably be a Premier League regular, because I think he is capable of that if he has the opportunity to get there. If a Premier League team comes back in January, or certainly in the summer, then I don't see why he wouldn't move on.
Cool. Let's wait and see how that one pans out. And if anyone has any Liam Moore statements, questions, opinions, and whatnot, feel free to get involved at the Tilehurst End Twitter, on Facebook as well, and the tilehurstend@gmail.com. Which, speaking of which, is the home of the Mailbag. We move on to the Mailbag now and answering your questions from the last week.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
So starting us off in the Mailbag then this week is Steve Curtis, aka Royal Hoops, who is congratulations, by the way, Mr. Curtis and Mrs. Curtis, for your lovely wedding about a week or so ago that myself and Simeon attended, which was a lovely day for all concerned. And he's now back into football mode, which is good on him. And he's asking us who will score more goals this season, Bodvarsson, Baldock or McNulty. I'm going to go Baldock, because at the end of the day you're talking about a player who might not contribute so much across the pitch, but in terms of hitting the back of the net and scoring goals inside the box, I think Baldock is the one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he's the one that is most likely to kind of get picked out by his teammates, the one that they're going to try and set up, to be honest. You look at Bodvarsson, he's more going to bring other players into the game, whether it's Swifter or Winger trying get into a scoring opportunity. But if he plays, Baldock is going to be on the last man trying to get into those goal scoring opportunities.
Yeah, thank you for that, Steve. Hopefully we'll be having him back on the podcast at some point this season. And moving on to Mike Kearns, who said, should we be starting McNulty instead of Bodvarsson? What did you see out of McNulty on the Forest game? You had 30 minutes. Obviously, we're kind of chasing the game a little bit. What sort of characteristics did you pick up in comparison to we all know what we're getting with Bodvarsson by now?
It sounds a bit harsh, but I thought he was a bit anonymous, to be honest. He didn't really have too much of a chance to get into the game. I know he was on for quite a while, and kind of during that period that Reading were trying to push on and get the equaliser, but didn't really see him get involved enough, to be honest. I know it's early days for him, to be fair. He's made the step up from League Two, and it's a big ask for him to come from the 4th tier up to the 2nd tier and to have an impact either immediately or over a couple of weeks, to be honest. But didn't really see too much from him.
Probably see him against Birmingham, I should expect. McNulty, and then maybe if he performs well, he'll probably continue on the bench regardless for the Bolton game, unless he can really tear apart Birmingham on Tuesday night. Alex Everson asks, is it possible that despite all the protests we could play better than last season and still end up with a similar style season in terms of results? I think that's highly possible. I think that's sort of what we're on for at the moment. The first 2 performances have shown glimpses of quality and organisation and the sort of things that maybe we didn't have under the Stand, but ultimately the results are the hardest thing to get, and we're not getting them at the moment. And there's not necessarily any sense that it's going to turn immediately, is there?
No, that's a good point, and I guess we're all looking at the Bolton game as kind of the obvious place to really kickstart our season, where they're a team that only scraped survival and haven't done too much in the transfer window. I don't think they're probably that team that you really want to earmark for a win, but they're still a tough side to play against, and as they showed last season, they're more than capable of coming to the midday scheme, making themselves hard to beat, and could be a potential banana skin. And I guess going back to kind of before the season started, I was trying to look through the other teams to work out who was the obvious relegation candidates, and there's not a huge amount of teams that are obviously out of depth in this league. I guess you're looking at Bolton and Rotherham as perhaps the 2 obvious ones that teams are going to be trying to take points off. There are a lot of teams that are more than capable of taking a point or 3 off Reading this season.
No, and I suppose if you go further down the fixture list after Bolton as well, we go away to Blackburn, then away to Aston Villa, then at home to Sheffield Wednesday and away to Preston. Those are tough games, and if we don't get it against Bolton, then the pressure's on. 3 away games out of the next 4 after that, and you just do start to wonder where the results come, and the performances obviously can come and go, but the results are pretty black and white, pretty clear whether they come or not. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one in terms of performances versus results. But as Clement said himself, he does not want to become a sort of nearly team in that sense. Ryan Haddock asks, should Walker be given a chance? I mean, I suppose Sam Walker's going to be the goalkeeper for the Birmingham game. We'll get a good look at him then, the sort of debut as it were. And Mannone, I think there's one save he made against Forest that was sort of parried into a dangerous area, but I mean the goal that Forest scored certainly wasn't enough to warrant dropping Mannone for the weekend game, is there?
No, and he didn't have a lot to do, to be honest. I think Forest only had about 3 shots on target, including their goal. He couldn't do too much about it. It was a good strike from Hilal Soudani. And kind of putting that into context with the Derby game, at the end of the day, he's only made, one major mistake in 2 games. He's made a good save against Derby as well. So at the moment, it's a bit too early to drop him. And I think, as I've said before, you've got to make that kind of decision in the right way. You can't just drop your goalkeeper out of the blue when it's not obvious that he's deserved to be dropped, because then there's a bit of an imbalance, I think, in the goalkeeping department. You want there to be an obvious reason that he's been dropped, and then that gives an obvious opportunity for another goalkeeper to come in and really make that position his own. That was kind of the problem we had last season when Mannone wasn't at his best, but that decision to drop him and then bring in Ansi Jacola later on in the season, it just felt like a hashed decision, and it left Mannone upset. It left Jacola in a bit of an awkward position as well. So if you just drop Mannone when it doesn't really feel warranted, it doesn't feel properly like the fair decision, then it hurts the whole team.
Well, I think as well, if you put in Sam Walker, and obviously the League Cup game's a bit of a different kettle of fish, but if you put him in for the Bolton game, let's say, and Sam Walker commits a massive error, then you've got two goalkeepers that have both made massive errors, and ideally you want one goalkeeper to be there for 46 games. You don't want to change your goalkeeper at all, and I suspect at some point in the season we'll see Walker come in for the league games, but at the moment it's early days and it's hopefully not a problem position, and in the very least, if it is a problem position in terms of Mannone's form, then we have a backup, and that's when Walker will get his chance at some point, maybe over the course of the season. Joel Frayne asks, do you think Gunter's days are numbered based on the great performances of Yadon, or do you think we'll be, and I quote here, stupid enough to put him in at left back when he's back from injury? I don't think he's going to go in at left back because Tyler Blackett came back from suspension for the Forest game and got dropped straight in for Omar Richards, who came off the bench nonetheless. Yadon, I mean, he's, in terms of, I said earlier that Thiago Ilori and Paul McShane haven't put a foot wrong yet. I don't think Andy Yadon has either.
No, and he's looked very bright at right back. He's given Reading a really energetic presence, kind of defensively and offensively, which is something that Gunter really hasn't done in the last couple of years, to be honest. Just having that player who's going to get beyond your winger, kind of trying to get in behind and give Reading another option of stretching the play and creating something down the right. That looked really, really promising on Saturday, and he kind of built on his performance against Derby nicely, and you'd hope that he's going to give Reading that attacking presence going forwards. Gunter hasn't really had that. He needs to up his game going forwards if he's going to try to get into the team and get his place back. Kind of looking at his possibility of playing at left back, as you say, we got Blackett and Richards both competing for that place, and to be honest, Blackett looked not too bad actually on Saturday. He's had a lot of confidence problems over the last couple of seasons, but he looked a lot more assured, a lot more composed, a lot more like he knew how to do his job properly. I know that sounds a bit like a low bar to set him, but considering he's a player who's made a lot of mistakes, a lot of small errors in each game whenever he's played, for him to come in and give a pretty composed, physically commanding performance, I think he did. That's a good achievement for him.
Yeah, it's certainly been one of the positives from the transfer window as well, considering Yadon was free and he's got plenty of years left in him. So hopefully that'll be a good battle as well, because Chris Gunter hasn't really had anyone to battle with at all in the right back spot over the past couple years. Final question then comes from Tommy, who asks, can you compare individual players to high street shops? Now, this is definitely one that I want people to send in their own to on the Tilehurst End Twitter or the tilehurstend@gmail.com. Comparing players to high street shops. I'm going to start off with Chris Gunter, actually. I'm going to compare him to Wilko, the sort of shop you can buy, the basics. It's pretty cheap, but for some reason people look down on it. And I think that's kind of like Chris Gunter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just very dependable, no frills. Dependable, as you say. I went with John Daddy Bodvarsson and Iceland for obvious reasons. Nothing too out of the box.
For Bodvarsson, I said Mountain Warehouse, and that's for the sort of all-terrain, rugged wares that they flog.
Yeah, good choice. I'll also go with Marc McNulty as H&M as a nice cheap bargain that you can pick up.
Yeah, that works. I think John O'Shea, I've gone for Matalan for John O'Shea because I quite often walk past it and think, is that place still going? Is it still open? And they still do, and John O'Shea is still going. House of Fraser, a bit of a topical one. I've said Myler, because he's kind of a long-standing northern franchise in his sort of Hull connections, recently taken by a southerner on the cheap. So I've gone for House of Fraser and David Myler. Any others from yourself?
Only one more. I just thought after KFC's problems with stocking their chicken, looking at delivery problems, comparing him to Sonia Luca, I think there are similar problems there.
Yeah, there was certainly parallels.
Some really bad dad jokes here going on.
Oh yeah, send us your own, because we'll happily read them out. And my final one as well is Game, the video game shop, which is Yaku Meite, because it's idolised by children, and that's all I've got for that one. So send us in your own then, and we'll hastily move away from the dad jokes and the bad topical puns and head towards the Birmingham preview to round off the show.
The Tilehurst End Podcast.
Any other business?
Right, when the Carabao Cup comes around, and I'm not sure when or where this game was drawn, but I'm pretty sure Reading were told they were playing Birmingham at 3 o'clock in the morning in Singapore or something like that about 4 months ago in some Facebook link draw that they did. But nonetheless, it is Birmingham because there's no seedings for the first round of the EFL Cup, League Cup, whatever you want to call it, this season, and Birmingham it is. The question that I always want to know going into these sort of games is which youngsters are going to get the nod. I want to know the players, not necessarily that you want to see, but the ones you think we'll actually see on Tuesday night.
I think Omar Richards is the probably the only obvious one at the moment, to be honest. A lot of the youngsters have gone out on loan, so you can't really say that they're going to come in and play in the first team, particularly like Smith and Watson you might have seen come in and get a bit of game time in this team, but obviously not, given they've gone out on loan to get some more regular experience. Apart from Richards, there aren't really many options out there, I guess, apart from him, maybe Andy Renham-Hota as well, perhaps coming into the midfield, but I guess looking elsewhere, Danny Loader it's a possibility, but again with a lot of other players ahead of him in the pecking order, people like McNulty and Baldock are going to want to get some more game time in the starting 11. It's perhaps a bit unlikely.
Yeah, but a good clue as to who might be around is on Saturday, Reading under-23s drew 2-2 with Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I mean, you got Tom Holmes played in that game alongside Tom McIntyre in defence. Maybe one of those will be pulled up. Holmes, of course, made his first team debut last season. Renham-Hota played 82 minutes in that game. Tyler Frost, Josh Barrett, who's back from his loan at Coventry, played 90 minutes, as did Danny Loader. I mean, I expect to see a couple of those on the bench at the least. I probably would say Renham-Hota and Loader are the most likely to get brought up. And I mean, as you say, there were, after 2 games of the Championship in which we didn't really make any changes. Was it unchanged, I think, for the Forest game from the Derby game? Well, I suppose Baldock obviously came in, but we didn't make many changes. There are still a few players floating around who, like Landry Bakuna, hasn't started a game yet. You mentioned Omar Richards. We'll probably see one of Liam Moore or John O'Shea, I should imagine, as well. So not too many changes, but certainly onto the bench I'd like to see some.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess with Loader as well, there aren't many options we've got out wide at the moment. Especially with Aluko getting injured, you probably would have seen him start on Saturday or maybe appear on Tuesday night against Birmingham. But at the moment, it's only really Mate and Barrow that we've got as wide options at the moment. So if you do want another pacey option out wide, then Loader's probably about the closest you get. McCleary, Popper and Harriet all injured, so it opens him up for it opens things up for him perhaps more as a winger on Tuesday night than as an out-and-out striker.
Yeah, well, so I suppose we'll see if Paul Clement is tempted into any formation changes or whatnot. I should imagine he'll probably stick to what we've been working on so far in the early weeks of the season. Birmingham at home is a bit of an interesting one in the fact that our last 4 games at home to Birmingham, we've drawn 1 and lost 3, and in overall meetings, there was a knack for the away team to win this game. The home team has failed to score in 6 of the last 7 meetings between the two teams, and Reading, I can think of a couple off the top of my head, have won certainly at St Andrews a couple of times in the last few seasons. Bit of a weird one in terms of picking a result. I mean, we'll do a quick prediction in a moment because it generally depends on who takes it more seriously. I suppose we beat Millwall at home last season in the EFL Cup with a pretty rotated team, although it did take extra time. 8 p.m. Tuesday kick-off, just to confirm. And in terms of the League Cup as well, Reading haven't progressed past the 4th round since 1997-98 when there was a controversial defeat to Middlesbrough in the last moments at Elm Park. Probably a few fans can remember that one. But in terms of that prediction then, what do you think is going to happen at home to Birmingham?
I am going to go with... I'm going to stick with history books and say a 1-0 win for Birmingham City. It tends to be the away side winning, and it also tends to be the home side not scoring. When you look at Birmingham winning 2-0 at our place last season, us winning 2-0 at Birmingham last season as well, I guess we won't score, looking at the form that we're in at the moment in front of goal, and I can see Birmingham just edging it.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1-1 with this one. It's not part of the prediction league for the record, so I think it's going to go down to penalties. And I think it's about £7 or £5 or something if you buy it on Monday evening, which we're recording it now, so I doubt you probably would have by now. Or £10 is the match day price for adults, I believe. So you'll get your money's worth if we go 100. Is it 120 minutes, or is it straight after 90 minutes we go straight into penalties?
Go straight to penalties this year.
That is one of the other rule changes this year, is that there will be no extra time against Birmingham on Tuesday night. So bear that one in mind for loved ones picking you up. I know I certainly will have to. And we'll finish then with the prediction league and update you on how that's getting on after 2 games. And Dan Wimbush, Wim, is 2 for 2 on 6 points at the moment. He's had 2-1 Derby and 1-0 Forest, which I also had for the weekend, and Ollie Allen did. So Ollie is slotted in second position with myself in third at the moment. Johnny Handbags and Westy have all gone for 2 defeats out of 2, so they're on 2 points, not got the scorelines correct. Tom Crocker is on 1 point, and Sim, 2 1-1 draws, mate. That's a slow start.
I'm too optimistic with us.
Predicting 1-1 draws.
Exactly, and considering I was so very close to getting it on that first game, I'm pretty gutted.
Yeah, I was waiting for 1-1 then as well, actually.
I was waiting for so long to get involved in the prediction league over the course of last season, and now I'm in it. I'm immediately bottom of the table in true Reading fashion.
See, that's the pressure. You think of how much pressure you feel in the prediction league. Think of how much pressure the likes of Danny Loader and Tom Holmes have when they finally step onto the Medeski Stadium pitch that they've craved their entire lives. So hopefully, I mean, a lot of people probably listening to this after the Birmingham game. Hopefully we are safely into the second round of the League Cup, and hopefully we'll be cracking on against Bolton and getting the first points on the board. Quick word on that then. Sim, thank you for coming on to the podcast of course this evening. And positive or optimistic for Bolton?
I'm always optimistic. Always, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think we should be getting our first win on the weekend against Bolton. So until after that, we'll leave you to it. Of course, Ollie's preview show will be coming, I think, on Thursday afternoon or so, and we'll be joining you after 2 home games, Birmingham and Bolton, those teams that notoriously over the history of Reading Football Club, we always beat. Sometimes. Come on, you arse.
You smile, funny how the crimes always leave a trail.